Hello, and welcome to the Nutrition Diva podcast, a show where we take a closer look at nutrition research and trends so that you can make more informed decisions about what you eat. I'm your host, Monica Reinagel, and in addition to hosting this podcast, I'm also a speaker, a media expert, and a behavioral health coach. If you'd like to learn more about having me speak or lead a workshop at your next live or virtual event, you can find out more at my new website, wellnessworkshere.com. Today, I want to bring you up to date on a compound you may have started to hear more about. It's called Trimethylamine N-oxide. That's a mouthful. You'll usually see it spelled out as TMAO. People who eat meat and other animal products generally have higher TMAO levels in their blood, for reasons I'll explain in just a minute. And many people believe that this is part of the reason that diets that are higher in animal products have been linked with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease. In fact, if you have encountered this term, it's likely to have been from someone arguing that plant-based diets are just healthier. Now, before I go on, I want to acknowledge that our health is only one of many reasons that people may have for choosing to avoid animal products. There are also valid concerns about environmental impacts and animal welfare. In this episode, however, I'm focusing on TMAO and its potential role in human health. As I said earlier, those who eat vegetarian or vegan diets tend to have lower TMAO levels. And so this is mostly a concern for people who eat meat. At the same time, eating more protein is one of the top priorities among consumers who are trying to change their dietary patterns. And this is according to the most recent consumer survey from the International Food Information Council, IFIC. As I've talked about in several previous episodes, higher protein diets can help to mitigate age-related loss of muscle mass, which can lead to frailty and decreased quality of life. Protein also promotes satiety. You're likely to feel fuller for longer after a higher protein meal or snack than you would after eating a similar number of calories from lower protein foods. And that can be important for people who are trying to control their calorie intake in order to manage their weight. Now, if you are among those who are trying to get more protein, you will probably have noticed that animal foods are a lot more protein dense than most plant sources, meaning that you usually get quite a bit more protein per calorie and per serving from animal protein foods than from plant protein foods. In addition, protein from animal sources, including eggs, dairy, and fish, as well as meat, tend to be a higher quality protein, providing all of the essential amino acids in optimal ratios. Of course, it's not only about the protein. You may simply enjoy the flavor and the texture of a grilled chicken breast or steak or a cheese omelet. For many, these foods are an important part of their cultural traditions. Nonetheless, this whole TMAO thing has people worried. Do you have to choose between your heart health and your body composition? Do you have to give up foods that you enjoy in order to enjoy a long and healthy life? Not necessarily. First, let's take a closer look at how TMAO is created. When we consume foods that are high in choline and L-carnitine, these are two nutrients that are found primarily in animal-based foods, the bacteria in our guts transform those nutrients into a substance called trimethylamine, or TMA. This TMA then makes its way into our liver, where it is oxidized into TMAO. Now, different animal foods vary significantly in their TMAO producing potential. Red meat produces the highest levels, followed by fish, eggs, white meat, such as poultry, and dairy products. Fish is actually an interesting case. It's lower in L-carnitine than either red meat or poultry. However, it naturally contains some TMAO. So the spike in TMAO blood levels after eating fish is less about the gut bacteria action and more from the fish itself. Now, as I said earlier, higher TMAO levels have been linked with a higher risk of heart disease and other health issues. But you might be wondering, is TMAO really the villain here, or maybe just an innocent bystander? And that is a great question, because most of the research that links elevated TMAO levels with health risks in humans is observational. And as I never get tired of saying to you, correlation is not causation. That said, animal studies have shown that directly administering TMAO can promote heart disease, and that evidence certainly strengthens the case that high TMAO levels may play a causal role in cardiovascular disease. So if you are a committed vegan, you're probably feeling pretty good about your choices right about now. If, on the other hand, you're someone who sees benefits to incorporating some animal products into your diet, I bet you're ready for some good news, and I do have some for you. But first, let's take a look at what we can learn from our vegan friends. As a rule, they do have lower TMAO levels in their blood, and they also tend to have lower rates of heart disease. Although this is not as binary an equation as it might sound. The association between meat consumption and increased health risks, for example, is most pronounced in those who eat a lot of meat, so 2 or more servings every day. And by contrast, those who eat just 1 to 2 servings of meat per week generally have about the same health risks as those who never eat meat. But back to TMAO. Plant-based foods provide no L-carnitine, that's a nutrient that's only found in animal foods, and also a lot less choline than you're likely to get from animal foods. So with a plant-based diet, you just have significantly fewer substrates for the gut bacteria to convert into TMA, and that means there is less TMA to be oxidized into TMAO in the liver. But there's something else going on here as well. Plant-based diets tend to be higher in fiber, thanks in part to the increased role of legumes, nuts, and seeds as protein sources. That fiber feeds beneficial bacteria in the gut, fostering strains of bacteria that just produce less TMA, even when they do have those substrates or those nutrients around. And what's more, those bacteria tend to crowd out the TMA-producing microbes. So, could increasing fiber help reduce TMAO levels in meat eaters? After all, meat eaters who eat more fiber do have lower risks of heart disease, also of type 2 diabetes and colorectal cancer. How much of this could possibly have to do with the impact of fiber on TMAO production? A couple of studies have attempted to suss this out, albeit with mixed results. One of them was a study in mice. First, researchers fed the mice a diet high in red meat, which, predictably, increased their TMAO levels. But when they added fiber to that red meat diet, it reduced TMAO levels in the mice by 40 to 60%. And there was also a small pilot study in which human subjects took either a fiber supplement or a placebo for 2 weeks, and then they ate some beef. And compared to the placebo, the fiber supplement did seem to reduce TMAO formation in response to that meat. However, the effect was most noticeable in people who didn't eat that much meat in their regular diets. There was also an intriguing study which found that the amount of meat people ate actually did not reliably predict their TMAO levels in healthy individuals, but measures of their microbiome diversity did. Obviously, we're still unraveling the complex relationships between animal protein, fiber, TMAO production, and disease risks. But if you do choose to include animal products in your diet, here are a few tips that can help you balance the potential impact of that on your TMAO production and your disease risk. Number 1, it might be a good idea to limit your consumption of red meat to no more than a couple of times a week, as it does tend to provoke more TMAO production than other types of animal protein. Even better, you could add a couple of meatless meals to your rotation. Number 2, consider adjusting your portion sizes. Because animal proteins are so very protein dense, a little goes a long way. So a 3 to 4 ounce serving of beef, pork, or chicken, as opposed to the 6 to 8 ounce serving that we are used to seeing on our plates, that smaller serving provides more than enough protein to maximize those muscle building effects that many of us are concerned with. Number 3, take advantage of plant-based burgers and sausages as an alternative. These days, they are so similar to the real thing, you will barely notice the difference. And a study published in 2020 by Chris Gardner found that replacing beef with these kinds of plant-based meat alternatives had several positive effects on health, including reducing levels of TMAO. And finally, bump up your fiber intake by incorporating more beans, lentils, whole grains, nuts, and seeds into your diet. Snack on some edamame or roasted soybeans. Top your salad with chickpeas or 3-bean salad. Replace half of the carnitas in your tacos or your burrito bowls with pinto or black beans. Try a tofu scramble or a mock egg salad made with tofu. These foods are rich in fiber that foster that healthy gut microbiome, which may further reduce TMAO production when you do eat animal protein. If you have a question about this episode or a topic you'd like to suggest for a future episode, you can email me at nutrition@quickanddirtytips.com or leave me a voicemail at 443-961-6206. I'd also like to invite you to check out my other podcast. It's called The Change Academy, where we explore the art and science of creating positive behavior change, both in our own lives and in our workplaces and communities. You can find it wherever you are listening to this podcast. Just search for Change Academy. Nutrition Diva is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast, and our team includes Brandon Getchis, Nathan Sems, Davina Tomlin, Holly Hutchings, and Morgan Christensen. That's all for this episode. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next week.